Hello, lovelies. So today was a really nice day. My husband and I went walking around a local gardens here in LA, and it was really lovely. I'm gonna feel my thighs tomorrow. They're gonna be telling me some stories, that's for sure. But it was really great. And so when I checked in to see what we were going to talk about today, there was this idea that modifying behavior and lack of self-expression seems to be confused right now. And so they're being seen as limiting to people in a way that people don't like. So in my work with people, a lot of what I find that I do is create understanding of words within their system so that they have a cleaner understanding of the words that they use to describe something. And if those words were intended to be used that way on an innate level, because you could pick one word out of the hat, right, and ask 25 different people, and you may get a good 22 different types of explanations of that word and how to use it within structures of explaining yourself, right? So words are really cool because they will hit true for some people and not hit true for others. When I hear words in people's system, I sort of get, it's almost a tone, if it fits for that person or not, if it fits the way that they're wanting it to fit in their system. Sometimes we just become used to using certain words and they no longer really resonate, which is that tone that I hear. They don't really resonate for our purposes anymore. And yet we still use them. Why? Because they became habit. So the difference between modifying your behavior and being limited by having your behavior limited. So, how did that come through today? I'm checking back in my files as to, again, how my day is a reference for the topic, because it helps me explain it for myself so that I can dialogue with you about it. Okay, so the two have become almost synonymous as I'm hearing it through guidance. Modifying and being limited. To the point that there seems to be difficulty requiring modification in a behavior in public without feeling like somehow you are the most judgmental, rude person for asking for such a request. Example. And I have several age examples. So we're out in the open in this beautiful garden out in the park. Tons and tons of acreage, right? And there are families with children who make it more of a quiet time, connect to nature, that sort of thing. A little bit of running around, but nothing much, not too much. And then you have the families with kids where they have been allowed to scream, whenever, wherever, however, run around however they want, run through the gardens, run through the the thousands and thousands of dollars this place has spent on planting. And so that's the diversity, right? And so if we were to insert a request for the families to reduce the behaviors of the children, it would, how dare you, is, the kind of energy that our society gives now. Which is interesting because it's almost the opposite prejudice, right? So if there's a prejudice against, say, loud kids somewhere in public, right? Because some people have that, especially people who don't have children or never wanted them. There's the opposite prejudice of, if we ask you to be respectful that there are different types of families asking for different types of experience or different types of individuals in this public arena, that's almost like a reverse prejudice that they won't modify their behavior, right? So it's just, it's interesting. I'm going to keep going and then I'll loop it around to better understanding. Another example, in a restaurant, and different age range. There's adults in one section, there's some teenagers who happen to be with adults, but they're related, they don't want to be next to each other. And having a dialogue across the patio in a place where other people are sitting wanting a quiet, beautiful evening together. So, again, prejudice against people who are having this conversation across the patio, and the reverse prejudice of not caring about the people who are trying to have a quiet time. So those are, again, extremes of the same thing. And so, I think there's an example for older people, but I'm going to let it go. So it's an interesting thing that modifying your behavior because of where you are and respecting that there may be different types of needs in a public area has gone to the point where now, if that is a request of the establishment, the request of the environment that's around you, that asking you to modify your behavior, not have loud cell phone conversations, not, yelling across the restaurant to dialogue with someone that you came with, not have your kids run around openly and where there's things that could fall, break, run into people. All that sort of stuff is now being seen as socially limiting. And I just do not hear that that is an appropriate response. And it needs to be reevaluated. I remember, because we came over from another country, we had, we had the attempting to blend in kind of thing. And so I think my parents on some level may have been pretty vigilant about not standing out, be respectful, that kind of thing. Well, for lots of other reasons, but we'll just keep it there. So, when we went to someone's house, there was an expectation of a certain kind of behavior, which was not really that different from being at home, to be honest. So that on that level, maybe there were some limitations, but because you were in someone else's environment, whether that's a business or private, there was a certain level of expectation. There was also a certain level of expectation of dressing up out of respect, right? So these kinds of traditions have way gone in a lot of ways, way gone. Or there's this mix, because I do a lot of parties where I'm in a, multicultural event, or, isolated cultural events, or, ranges of family dynamics, which is kind of why I use families a lot as examples. And so then there's this whole other dichotomy of people who are dressed really, really fancy and doing these behaviors that are like you would see at a park. It kind of like funks with my human brain. It funks with my human brain. On the guidance side of it, the question is, there's almost this ask of, is it really so bad to modify within your environment out of respect for everybody else around you? That's the question. Is it reasonable? Is it appropriate to dress in a way not necessarily pleasing other people? It's really more about just showing respect. Showing respect in, and whatever that dress up may be, doesn't have to look a certain way. I know I've gone to many teen parties where there's girls in these to the nine dresses, right? Their hair was done, their nails were done, and the boys come in these disgusting, dirty jeans and shoes and a t-shirt. Affordability is one thing, totally get it. But again, we're going back to modifying, right? And how else do we really help each other out as a society? How do we keep the societal expectations at a place where it's kinder than it is now? Kinder. Because I think it feels like there's so much off the deep end of, I'm not changing who I am, you're going to have to you be okay with me. And this like extreme narcissism of what I want is the most important thing. And I just keep hearing it's way out of balance. Way out of balance. So I apologize if I went on a tangent. It just feels like it's way out of balance. And the way to bring things back into balance is to slightly restrict it so you can get a new palpation around the energy and the tension, so to speak, of where to take it next. Okay? So it's not unusual for the pendulum of change to swing from one extreme, swing back to the other, and then, slowly start shifting a little bit, so it gets somewhere in a homeostatic perspective. And I just think that that's what I'm hearing is where we are, is to recalibrate, allow for some social limitations, just out of respect of the diversity of the people around you. Right? So, yeah. I didn't say I was going to have an answer for any of this. I was just saying what I heard. So challenge. The challenge that is going to be set forth is to just pay attention to your surroundings. One, notice who is not modulating without judgment. Just out of observation, who is not modulating to the surroundings? Are you the type of person who will, hair will stand up and the horns will come out a little bit, ready to tell someone to get in their position of modifying? I'm that person sometimes. And more so when I'm noticing it's a kid and the parents are absolutely clueless or whoever the adult is with them, absolutely clueless. And like, it's not a big deal. Like, if you if your kid pours water on the floor in the middle of the restaurant, it's a mad dash to get that cleaned up, as far as I'm concerned. Out of respect. Guidance says, be respectful, take care of it. That's all. For me, I make a mad dash. I'm like circling the wagons, making sure no one slips and falls, because that would just be horrifying. And so there are times I definitely might come out, and in a very direct, kind voice, I will help the child out, or the parent out. And never in a way to make them feel I'm demeaning them, but in a way that I am demeaning them. However, in a way that says, you know what, you kind of weren't paying attention. Okay? So, your challenge is to make an observation of these calibrations that may or may not be going on in your environment. And then to see your reaction to it. It's always good to see how we respond to certain things. Or if we really just have never paid attention. Have you never paid attention? That happens a lot. Many times we are in zombified energy, and we just the whole day, and we don't pay attention to what's going on around us. And that's part of the problem, kinda. We're not really plugged in. And so that's your challenge. I know this kind of went into a weird place, but yeah. Nature is so forgiving, and it would be great if we as humans can be both as forgiving and as wise, and at the same time, being that we are still human, having the grace and the respect of nature, and have the same grace and respect for other humans. Much empowerment to you. Today's the 25th day, and I will see you again.